So I think it looks like we are live. I hope that we are live. Someone give us a thumbs up from somewhere if we're live. Yes, it looks like we are. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are dialing in the world from. It is a late afternoon in Cape Town, South Africa, where I'm sitting. I'm Jane Bullen, the Managing Director of the Nutrition Network. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is a really, really interesting, exciting live that I'm really excited to learn about, learn from, and have this conversation with the three of you. So I'm joined here today by the amazing leading team and founding team of FitGMR. So for those of you who don't know what this is, they are one of our partners that we've been working with, I think, for nearly a year now. Is that possible? Not quite. Maybe started talking long before a year, but we've been formally partners for almost a year. And I'm joined today by three of the amazing co-founders and leaders of the business. Kristen Anderson, who is the CEO and the co-founder. Holden McRae, who is a co-founder, and Landon Gabenko, who is, I had to write this down, you're the head of mental performance conditioning, and you're also a world-class gamer. Is that self-declared, or is that an official title?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll take it officially. No, it's definitely just self-declared.
Thank you so much, all three of you, for joining. Really excited to have you here. For those of you that are listening on the Nutrition Network forums and pages, please feel free to ask questions and to actually engage in this. We wanted to do it firstly so that you actually know about the work that FitGMR is doing, because it's actually incredibly interesting, inspiring, certainly for me. I'm the mom of a teenage boy that is into gaming, and I feel like I've spent the last 10 years kind of trying to get him off screen, and have actually learned a lot through meeting you and learning about this content more and more, how to find a better balance and how to include it in a healthier way. And I think that's what you're trying to do. But let's hear from you. Who wants to take the first question, which is, what is FitGMR?
You wanted me to do it,
Yeah,
Kristen?
go on. Yes,
Sure.
please.
Sure. So I think a little historical perspective might be very good. I grew up in South Africa. Prof. Noakes, Tim Noakes, who started the Nutrition Network, was my PhD supervising professor. So I've known, and actually prior to my PhD, I did an honors degree in sports science at the University of Cape Town. And Prof. Noakes was the convener of that course. So that was 1981, first sports science course in Africa. Got me turned on to the integration of medicine and physical education, which we now talk about as being kinesiology, or human movement science, or exercise and sports science. So that's the evolution. And off and on, I've stayed in touch with Prof. Noakes, saw the Nutrition Network being launched by him to change the way people see obesity, see insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, and offer medical practitioners as well as people in the health, wellness, fitness area and allied health sciences a effective and, I would say, practical way to reduce risk for developing those chronic diseases, specifically obesity and type 2 diabetes, particularly. One of the things I did as a professor is also work as a consultant. And one of the companies I consulted with was Red Bull High Performance, not in the sense of, well, let's see how many people we can get to consume high caffeinated, high sugar energy drinks, but how can we help performers, whether they are endurance athletes, whether they are action sport athletes, and in this particular case, cognitive performers, esports / gamers, achieve high levels of health as well as optimize their performance. And so in 2017, I worked with a manager at Red Bull High Performance to build out a support program for the teams and individuals they were sponsoring in the gaming / esports space. And FitGMR evolved out of that work. beginning in 20, Kristen, you'll have to help me. It's been a while. I think it was maybe 2020, I think.
2018 that we started working with directly with Cloud9, one of the sponsored Red Bull teams, and then 2020 that we started working on FitGMR, and we were incorporated in early 2021.
Right. So it's been an evolution. Essentially, we took best practices from what we knew in traditional sport with regard to things like, well, what do you need to do with physical conditioning? How important is sleep, and how do we optimize sleep? Specifically for gaming, what are the nutritional needs of a gamer, and how do we prevent because it's a very sedentary activity, how do we minimize the effect of sitting a lot and perhaps even eating foods that are going to increase your risk for insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes? How do we optimize cognitive performance through the foods you eat? What are you doing away from the keyboard or away from the console or away from the desk with your life? And then the other aspect that Landon is very good at is, well, are you ready to actually game today? And when you game, how well are you doing in the game? So looking at those things, and how do you optimize your mental performance? So it's been a fantastic journey. We've built technology. We have an Android app that you can get on the Google Play Store. We have an iOS Apple Store app that has both content as well as these, what we call 5 pillars of health, where you can daily track how you're doing in each of the pillars. We have a web app so that coaches or parents or educators of kids, with permission from players, can track daily health metrics in these different pillars, and can also look at aggregated team performance over time. So that's a little bit of the history of who we are, what we do. I think we would all say that we're very much about health of the individual first, and ways to optimize the health of the individual, whether it's the kid, the parents who are involved in the kids' lives, or the professional or semi-professional gamer. How do we do that? Together with what are the actual application, the ways in which you can go about doing that. A lot of health devices track metrics, but they don't actually give you the steps to take to change the way you live your life in these different health verticals, and in this case specifically in cognitive performance.
So it's a real life app for gamers, basically, that actually includes esports into the lifestyle recommendations. Is that a good summary of it?
What would you say, Landon?
Yeah, I think so, because it's one of the things for a lot of gamers is that due to the digital age, due to how fast information spreads within that digital sphere, we can see that the culture, the context, the nuance of this generation or this demographic of people is just rapidly changing almost on a month-to-month basis. And so when you're designing, how are we going to figure out to shift or change or the best practices for this demographic and for gamers, for these types of people, you have to speak directly to them within the things that they need, within the nuance that they want. So I think that's kind of what the app accomplishes. It removes all these generalities of you should be fit, you should be healthy, you should be eating these things, you should be doing these things. And rather it brings all those things and speaks to the very specific nuance of individual gamers, and it keeps up to date with like the context, the culture of gamers, the language, the most important things currently. And so this app is really specifically designed so that it speaks to gamers where they're at, like what they need and those types of things.
So can we just talk about who are these gamers? And I'm asking this for the audience who's probably thinking the same thing. I mean, my first reaction when we first started talking about this was when you said esports, I was like, is it a sport? And I can imagine people. So can we talk about who your typical gamers are and why you see esports, why esports is actually a sport and how it's defined in that way these days?
Yeah, I can jump on this one. So here's a good rule of thumb: is every time you come up to somebody, flip a coin. If it's heads, they're a gamer. If it's tails, they're not. It's just kind of like a being facetious there, but almost 50% of the population, we're getting to that point where there are so many gamers across the world. And this kind of spans to like broadly like phone games, computer games, Xbox play. So that's kind of broad. But when we're thinking about that's the sphere of gaming. And when we kind of zoom in a little bit, we can start seeing the ecosystem of esports, which is a subsection of gaming, because not all games are competitive, right? You get like just phone games that you're just doing to pass time. You get single player games that are more like adventure story, kind of following along with a movie almost in a sense. Those aren't competitive, so we wouldn't call them esports. They are in the gaming bubble, not esports. And so when you zoom in, you start to see this subsection of gaming that is hyper competitive, highly structured. There's different divisions, different ranks, there's different objectives that you're trying to do. And this is where we're starting to find this is where we start to define what esports is. It's a highly competitive ecosystem or subsection of gaming where people get to train, compete, grow, develop, play with teammates, get coaching, get training, pretty much all that type of stuff. And like just this past weekend, for example, just finished yesterday, the Call of Duty League just finished I think it was their third major of 2022. And the arena that they played in was the arena that the Maple Leafs used to play in for the NHL. Like that's the kind of scale that we're looking at now. And so the type of people it's like half the population almost at this point. Those aren't all esport athletes. They might be gamers. And you zoom into the subsection, you start getting highly competitive structures. And that's where the esports exists. And there's a lot of kind of like nuance and stuff that goes into that. Like some of the esports are franchised, right? And so teams have to buy their franchise slot, just like the NHL, like with how Vegas bought their team a few years back. That's really what we're looking at in a lot of these major esports, like League of Legends, the primary game of Cloud9. In order to compete in League of Legends, you have to buy a franchise slot, and then you have your seasonal play, you have your tournaments, you have your World Cup, whatever sport you watch, the Grey Cup, the Stanley Cup, the Super Bowl, whatever it is. That's the equivalent that we're looking at. Tens of millions of people watch that. They compete, pretty much identical to what traditional sports does in those structures now. Whether or not it's a sport is your question. I think that's a question I've always tried to figure out, and I've come to the conclusion that I don't know if I care as much anymore. Like sure, it could be a sport, could be not a sport, depending on how you define things. But what we do know is that esports is incredibly competitive. It's got a high level of skill development and skill acquisition that requires training, discipline, dedication, focus, concentration, all of those types of things. It's incredibly cognitive. It takes the amount of information processing and decision making and visuospatial awareness and everything that kind of goes into the cognitive aspects of performance. Esports encapsulates to a very, very high degree. So whether or not it's a sport, kind of up to each individual to make that decision for themselves, but we can be certain that it's highly skilled and incredibly complex.
And I would just add, I think it's slated to be in the Olympics in 2028. So esports will be an Olympic sport as well. And while, we got our roots in with one of the professional teams at the highest elite level, our app is really designed for all levels of gamers. So from recreational all the way to professional. And where we're seeing the most change right now is at that recreational level, where high schools, middle schools, certainly the collegiate space are all now have teams in the same way that they have a soccer team, they have an esports team. And while at this stage, it's maybe a club sport, it is still a team sport, and colleges are giving scholarships to kids to play on their team. And so a lot of what we're doing is supporting the elite athletes and helping them to optimize their performance, but also starting with the younger generations of gamers, specifically in high schools. We are rolling out our app in the fall to an organization in the United States that has 40 to 50,000 gamers in it. That's a nationwide, state-led organization to help this generation of gamers learn what is healthy gaming and how can they stay and become aware of healthy habits and prevent some of the negative, potential negative side effects of gaming. So when we were getting started, it was kind of around the time of when an elite gamer who goes by the name Uzi, most gamers have their kind of game name, and he was 23 years old at the top of his field and retired because he had, went to a doctor and had type 2 diabetes caused from, obesity, lack of sleep, poor nutrition, high levels of stress. And, that's really what we're trying to prevent, is to increase the longevity of gamers so that they aren't retiring in their early 20s, but can have a long, healthy career. And not only that, but really rise to the top of their game.
Kristen reminded me of something with the Olympics. It will also be in the Commonwealth Games this year. So in Birmingham, Esports will be there in the Commonwealth Games. So if you're Canadian, you get to cheer for Team Canada this year.
Oh, so I mean that basically that means it's decided. If it's considered a sport at the Olympics and in the Commonwealth Games, it's a sport. So that's the jury's out, and it's now a question of how do we actually include this into the category of sports in a way that's healthy and meaningful, I guess. And that's why this is such a brilliant product and so essential. So why FitGMR? I mean, you've talked a little bit about the story behind it, Holden, but why is it so important? I could answer that as a mother, but I'd love to hear from you guys as to actually the core reasons for why we need gamers to get onto this and what it's going to do to support their health.
I can kind of tell a story on this a little bit by going through like anecdotally my background and why I think it's important for the next generation. Because as I was growing up, as I was coming through my teens, I am as true to form to my very core gamer, always have been. I will die with a controller in my hand. It is who I am. And like I said, always will be. But as I was coming through my teen years, I kind of took gaming to the wrong end of the spectrum, right? Like I did the unhealthy things. I went down the wrong roads, and I was classified as like obese or morbidly obese. I had a lot of just like overall psychological struggles. Like I was I struggled with social anxiety to the max, and I had a hard time making friends. I didn't know how to talk to people. I would freeze up when I meet new people. I'd just be like a walking bunch of sweat always whenever I had to talk to new people. And so I struggled with a lot of things through my own development. And I don't know if it was because of gaming, but it definitely was tacked along with that and went side by side, was at the very least correlated with, right? And so I've been through every single danger or stress or issue that kind of come along with gaming, and I eventually kind of came out the other end, and I wanted to solve for a lot of these issues that I was experiencing. I wanted to kind of help myself grow and develop and become better. I don't know how to do that, right? Like I was a 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kid. What's with all the mass amount of information on working out, what's the correct one? Am I supposed to try and run for 10K a day? Am I supposed to be in the gym doing isolated workouts? Am I supposed to be doing heavy compound lifts? Like, what am I supposed to be doing? And I don't have, as an 18, 19-year-old, the ability to figure out what's correct. I more or less choose what's in front of me, right? And that applies to all of the pillars of health that we talk about. So in terms of working on my mental performance, like what's correct? Am I supposed to be hyper gritty and push through all the pain? Am I supposed to kind of employ a little bit more of like self-love and appreciation? Where does that come in? And nutrition, what am I supposed to be eating? Is it this diet or that diet or this way? Like, how do I do all of these things? And it's kind of unreasonable to expect a 17 to 19-year-old to figure out what's correct with the vast amount of information that's out there. And so I think one of the big purposes or intents here is to to take all that information that us as experts know and pull it into a platform that is easy to digest, easy to consume, and understandable for somebody who's in that maybe like 14 to 20, 22 year range, so that they don't have to wonder if they're making the right choices. They have everything correctly built and structured so that they can just follow along, and they don't have to go through that process that I did. It was like, is this right? Is that right? Do I do this? Am I hurting myself? Am I going to cause an issue by doing this? Am I going to be healthy by doing this? Like you can remove that ambiguity there and have just like concrete plans of actions of how you're going to take steps to increase or improve your life.
So Landon, how did you do it? Because I mean, it sounds like you actually found your own way through this, and it seems to have come out the other side and are now doing this work, and being a part of the solution. So did you just figure it out for yourself?
Yeah. Yes. Well, kind of. And it was really messy and chaotic, right? Like I know for a fact, like I started really with the physical side of things, because it's always, sometimes it's easier to start with something tangible. How do you work on the psychology? It's a little bit more ethereal and floofy, I suppose. So I started with something more tangible, and guaranteed I did not treat my body right at that point, because I pulled my food so far to the extreme that I definitely wasn't eating enough, because that's what I thought losing weight was, right? Like I stopped eating a lot of things, and I would overexert myself for such a long period of time because I was so confused on how I do things. But that was kind of the starting process, right? As I went to the extreme and I didn't treat my body or my brain well at all, and I pushed it too hard on the opposite end. But that's where I started. And over time, I learned a little bit more about that. I was being not good to myself, and I was hurting myself, and I wasn't getting enough nutrients. That was causing things like brain fatigue and lack of energy and lethargy and stuff like that. So I adapted that as I learned over time. And that took years for me to learn that, because I didn't know enough to go to Google or to find an expert or anything like that. So it took years and years and years. But that's where I started, was how do I get my body into the correct place? And I started that journey, I think when I was roughly 19-ish, maybe coming into 20. And then, thinking backwards in time, in the moment, I didn't realize this, but thinking backwards in time, I ended up in a psychology degree. And I think that was my younger version of myself trying to learn something, right? Like, I think I opted into that, or I went down that path because I was trying to figure something out. And at the moment, you don't really feel like that, but when I look back in time, that's kind of how it works. And so I started working on the psychological or the mental aspect of myself in terms of like social anxiety, general anxiety, and all those types of things. And I think through that, I learned a lot of information. So I had these two pieces now, and I still had so much to learn because I didn't know how to learn about these things, but that was how the journey really started. And by the end of the degree, I realized I didn't want to go down traditional counseling or whatever. And I met somebody who trains a lot of the Canadian Olympians. And I go, that's the one. I want to do that. And I want to bring it to esports so that I can help the next generation of gamer understand to, first, let's prevent a lot of the things that I went through. But number two, if you're already in a lot of those things, how do we do it correctly and not go down the same pathways that I did and doing it incorrectly, right? And so I guess that's kind of my journey. Started with the physical, didn't do it correctly, went down to the degree of psychology, and then bunches and bunches of years later, now I'm working in esports for that.
Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. It's such an interesting point that you raise around, how your mental health started to deteriorate and how you were struggling with things like social anxiety, because I know it seems to be a universal story with, kids in general. So I'm not going to say it's only gamers. So what advice and tips do you have, and does the app have, that supports, kind of cognitive balance, mental health, wellness, that area?
So I can take that one, and then Landon, you can add on. And just to give a quick shout out to Landon, I think he is also going to be working with the Canadian sports team in the Commonwealth Games. So he's accomplished, exactly what he set out to do. And that is something we can speak to later in terms of careers in gaming, because I think that's something else that we want to highlight through the app. But to take kind of jumping off from where Landon just was, the app is really a system. So we have metrics, which are basically a way to track your habits in the 5 pillars of health, which are physical maintenance, everything to do with the physical body, mental conditioning, everything that has to do with Landon's world, nutrition, which is Everything Nutrition Network as our partner in nutrition, sleep, and lifestyle, which gets to what Holden was saying about what we do away from the keyboard, and the fact that actually science does prove that if you can step away from something and then come back to it, you will be better at it. But if you continue doing the same thing over and over again, your brain is not designed to do the same thing over and over again. It looks for diversity. So the importance of balance and lifestyle. And so in our metrics, we track daily habits in a sense, not only to improve those daily habits, but just to generate awareness. So questions in the mental conditioning pillar, like, did you have any connections today? Were they one-on-one? Were they in a group? How did you feel afterwards? Were you energized? Were you deflated? You know, just to kind of help build people's awareness of, I know even for my husband, who is our other co-founder, who has been the person who is working with Cloud9 for the last 3 or 4 years, he was at a conference, an esports event, an esports conference where, you know, there were thousands of people. And he said, I was so interested that I got to the end of the day and was putting in my metrics and it said, you know, group or one-on-one. And when I put group, how it made me think about how energizing it was to be in that environment. Things like water, hydration, how much water should you be drinking? How much water did you drink today? Things like quick drills, so which are quick movements that we advocate for gamers to do, you know, every hour, just stand up. We have a whole list of them you can choose from. Do 2 minutes of this exercise, whether it's arm swings or leg swings or squats or, you know, just bouncing around, what we call the Simon Shuffle, and just getting everything moving. Did you do your quick drills today? Did you do some physical movement? Did you go outside? Did you spend any time outdoors? And it could be walking to and from school, right? That counts. And then we have a section called the Vault, which is our content vault, which is where the content from Nutrition Networks lives. And it really is designed as a system so that you can just pick up the app on a given day and look at your daily programming. And, oh, today I do a workout. Monday, Wednesday, Friday are workouts. Tuesday is yoga. Thursday is mental conditioning. Saturday is educational content from the Nutrition Network and an optional workout for people who want to do that. And Sunday is our inspirational lifestyle content, which is our what we call go outside and play content. And it's really meant to just inspire people to do something away from the keyboard. We have a video on Sudoku, you know, like someone on our team who's just showing, you know, even just doing a puzzle like this, or going to some of our team members have taken people on a museum trip. You know, when was the last time you went to your local museum and look at, you know, the things you can learn there? And so it is, you know, the workouts are designed to be 20 to 25 minutes. That includes a warm up, a workout, a cool down. They are generally high intensity workouts. So in the same way that we have chosen Nutrition Network as our partner, because we know that the LCHF diet supports cognitive performance, we also know that high intensity workouts supports cognitive performance. But it's not done in a way that is overwhelming or designed for people who are already experts. You know, we had one review of our app from someone who used it on Twitter, who I think put it so well. He said, you know, this isn't about getting shredded. This is about just developing new gamer health habits. And you know, they really are meant to meet people exactly where they're at. So we offer modifications if this is new to you. And everything that's in the app has come from the R&D that we had been doing with Cloud9, you know, from 2018 to 2021, where we were just doing it. You know, we didn't kind of start doing this with the intent of developing an app or having this company. It was just, this is what we were doing. And out of it, we saw the success that was coming through it, and determined, along with, you know, the CEO and founder of Cloud9, that this is something that we probably should bring to the whole community. And just another anecdote is that we worked with one of their teams virtually last summer, the London Spitfire, who were, because of COVID, all over the world. You know, their players were playing together on a team, but they were all over the place. And, we met with them for an hour a day. We did basically the FitGMR programming, but, in person. And then, their season ended, and, we stopped working with them. And now the group has just, the team kind of got reshuffled. And there's now a new team with a couple of players that we had worked with. And they've just relocated to Los Angeles. And now we're working with them in person here. And one of them showed up and said, "Oh yeah, well, after we stopped working with you guys, I just kept doing it on my own." And, he's lost like 20 to 30 pounds. He, did an interview, sat down with my husband one day after workout and just said, he really likes the meditation. He does the physical activity, but he's noticed just from meditating and from doing the work that when he's playing in his games, he isn't second guessing himself so much. He doesn't overthink everything so much. And I mean, for an elite athlete where every second counts in decision making and against your opponent, to be able to trust your instincts and to be able to make decisions, I mean, that is part of the impact of our program. But not only that, he feels better, and from the founder of Cloud9, that was one of the kind of intangibles that he described as a benefit is, I mean, not only are people becoming mentally sharper, physically stronger, and generally better, they're more confident. And that translates into the game. Like, people build confidence by doing this program. So
talk to us about the lifestyle of elite gamers. I've heard stories from you that's blown my mind. I had no idea that there was such a sort of serious aspect of actual professional gaming. Team sport, it's a team sport. They're living together a lot of the time, in my understanding. What is their kind of typical day like?
Should I take this one? Yeah. It is, and like for people that don't fully or aren't fully aware of what the esport world looks like or what the games are, how they're played or anything like that, the real best way to think about it is a copy and paste replica of traditional sports, sort of. I'm using that loosely, but it's like the structures are all there, right? And so some teams do live together, and those are what we call like team houses, but a lot of teams, particularly in Europe and more so every year in North America, players will have their apartments or their houses nearby a training facility. So it depends on the team, depends on which living model that they follow. But what they do, or which every team does, is they do these things called scrim blocks. And you can think about these as like being on the pitch or being on the ice or whatever it is, like with your traditional sports. And so the team will come together. They will have usually their briefing session where they will talk about the strategy or the plays. They'll go over the X and O's, more or less, to use a traditional sport term. They'll go over the X's and the O's of what they're about to do in the game. So certain games, you have to choose different characters. So what's our composition going to look like? What kind of skill sets are we focusing on today? What's the overall objectives, or what we would call the macro? So like the large scope. What's our macro that we're focusing on for a day? And then we'll go into each individual. What are you focusing on today? Is there a certain skill set within this game that you need to be working on because this is where your weak point is? So we have what the individuals are working on, what the team is working on. We're briefing each other. We're looking into what's about to happen in these coming scrim blocks. Scrim blocks are where you as a team will compete against another team for a practice. So using Cloud9 as an example, because they play League of Legends. So Cloud9 will book a scrim block with, say, TSM. So they will come in, depending on what the length of the scrim blocks, typically about 2.5 to 3 hours. And they will play the game against each other. They might take a few minutes between games in order to assess what just happened. What do we need to adapt? What do we need to fix for the next game? And they will compete against the other team to practice. And so we'll have that long scrim block, and there'll usually be a break in between that. Then we'll have another scrim block. And so now will be a different team, most likely. And you'll be playing against that other team to practice, right? That's the full intent here, is we're trying to practice. We're trying to learn new things. We're trying to push limits. We're trying to assess where we're at. We're trying to make predictions on what we need to fix for the next time. Because a lot of the esports, they are, like I was mentioning earlier, extraordinarily cognitively complex. So there's a lot of preparation and planning that goes into figuring out it's like a giant puzzle. How do we solve for this, right? Like League of Legends specifically is a very, very fast and complex puzzle. And so when you go into a scrim, what they're trying to do is, how do I solve for this puzzle? What's the solutions that we're not finding it? And they're trying to find that. And so you'll typically have between 2 or 3 scrim blocks in a given day. And again, that's about 2 to 3 hours for each scrim block. So some teams are practicing about 5 to 6 hours a day. Some are practicing 8 to 9 hours a day. And then the thing that esports has that's very unique, and this is actually one of the aspects that could be a contribution to burnout, is what we call solo queue. So solo queue is another way for players to train. You can't, let's say I'm a hockey player. I always reference hockey because I'm a Canadian. So let's say I'm a hockey player and I want to go to the NHL, and I go to my practice in the morning, spend the time with my coach or my team, and I'm learning things. When I come home, I can't just continue to play hockey with a team, right? Like I have to get back on the ice, I have to do whatever. There's a lot of complexity that goes into that. For esports, what happens is when you're done your scrims, you can come home, you can open the game, you can log in, and you can hit find a game. And the game will then match you with enough people that you can now play the game by yourself with, for League of Legends, it's a 5-on-5 game. So it'll match you with 4 teammates and 5 enemies or 5 opposing teams. And they'll be roughly the same skill rank as you. So this isn't you just playing with amateurs, it's you playing with people that are roughly the same skill rank. So me as an individual, when the scrims are done for the day, I can still continue to play and train and work on specific skill sets. And so the given day, a lot of players will go through their scrim blocks, they'll do whatever their team needs them to do, they'll come home, and then they'll continue to train on solo queue, and they'll play by themselves and continue to hone some of their skills. And again, that's kind of could be a potential contributor to burnout, because you are practicing into more practice, into sleeping, into practicing, into more practice. It's kind of like a repetitive cycle there. But yeah, and when the day is done, you'll do things like watch the tapes, and to steal another phrase, they'll watch the tapes. We call it VOD reviewing in esports. So we'll do a VOD review where you will take some of the scrim blocks that you played today, and as a team, you will put them up on a big screen, and you will be watching and breaking down your plays by like play by play, and you'll be seeing like, all right, so our general game flow was incorrect here. How did we get to this state in the game? Let's go back 6 minutes and try and assess what series of events caused us to get to this point in the game, and where were your individual mistakes, where were the team mistakes, did we make the right call outs, did we make the wrong call outs, was our direction wrong, where were we failing as a team, or where were we excelling as a team? So after the scrim blocks, they go to watch the tapes, they do the VOD review to really figure out what needs to be worked on still for the next day. And so that's kind of the process. And depending on the game, also the seasonal play changes a little bit, but for League of Legends, for example, through the weekday, that's where we have all of our scrims, all of our solo queue, all the VOD reviews. And then on the weekends, you'll be playing against other teams in your typical seasonal play. So Saturday and Sunday, for example, each region changes a little bit too, but you'll be playing against another team to beat your wins and your losses, which will then eventually take you to the international events, which just kind of compound into the world tournaments and stuff like that. So extraordinarily highly structured, very complex, very like growth and development focused. It's individual skills, team-based dynamics, like all those types of things are worked on a daily basis.
Landon, can you talk a little bit about communication and comms? Because I think that's something that's, yeah.
One of the things that I'm particularly fascinated about in esports is the communication skills that are necessary. We often think, and this is like kind of stealing from my story, we often think that like gamers can't communicate very well, but when you're in a game setting, the speed or the rate at which you have to relay information to the game has almost, to a sense, naturally trained gamers to be hyper effective at describing things very, very rapidly. Because when you think about something like, let's say, soccer, you are talking to your teammates, you're making calls, you're making yells, you're calling that I'm open, whatever. Like there's a bunch of stuff that you're communicating, but it is very slow and not as complex in gaming. When we're looking at gaming, you have almost a game deciding play could happen in the span of 7 seconds. And in that 7 seconds, you as a team, and using League of Legends again as an example, you as a team have to track all of your own abilities, all of your own movement, the objectives in the game. But you don't only have to do that for your team, you also have to know for the other team. So if the other team is doing using certain abilities, or they're moving in a certain direction. You have to be hyper aware of all of those things at all times, because one mistake caused an entire team wipe. And so the ability to describe motion, or to describe strategy, or to describe play is so like hyper effective and succinct within gamers, and they can relay at such a rapid rate. And when you listen in, games will often do something called like team listen-ins, because you can hear the team talking, and they are just like spitting out mass amounts of information at a very fast rate. And when you listen to it, it's like, that's chaos. How is anybody hearing anything? But they're so attuned to this rapid communication and highly effective communication that they're getting just like dozens of words out to describe very specific situations, and everybody's hearing it, everybody's following through, everybody's taking it into account almost passively. And when you're working on like esport communications, it's like one of the big, or esports as a whole, one of the big focuses is how do we make sure that communication is effective, because that is so crucial to the game.
It's so amazing listening to you talk like this, Landon, because it's taught me, and it teaches me every time I communicate with you guys and understand more how it works and what you're doing, how important it actually is. I mean, I've always kind of had the perception that I've had to get my son off games into the world. Like I've spent an immeasurable amount of time, and I know other parents have the same story, trying to get him off games into sports, into other things. And what this is really, it is the new sport. And it is one of the reasons why he is such an intelligent kid. It's not like working against his intelligence or his development. So what I see is really the necessity to allow, in a functional and healthy way, to allow our children to get into this. I mean, given that, there's the opportunity to end up at the Olympics and to be interested and to want to spend this time on screen developing. So how do we as a parent help find this balance, find a way to support healthy gaming, and not kind of always, kind of be trying to plot against it or pull them off, but to encourage it in a way that's healthy and balanced? And how does the app help us with that?
I'll make one quick note on that too. And this is just kind of making a comparison to the traditional sport world. When we think of anything on like the combat sports, right? Like jiu-jitsu, taekwondo, anything like that. When you boil it down, that's fighting, right? And what parent wants their kids to fight? But then we also see at the same hand, like that's one of the most desirable things to put your kids into. So how did we take fighting and turn it into a discipline, right? And that's kind of what we want to do with esports, because the combat sports are hugely effective for training discipline, for self-control, for all it's in, but that's not fighting innately. We've taken something and created discipline within it. I think esports is kind of the same. Is gaming is scary because it can have so many negative things, but what if we turn it into a discipline and it creates these really highly structured and disciplined individuals that can navigate life because they learned something in a discipline, right? And so I sometimes think about esports in shifting or changing it the way that we did combat sports, where that is like I know a lot of parents put their kids in things like jiu-jitsu or taekwondo because it teaches those things, right? And that's kind of what I want to do in esports. And I know there's a mother over in Ontario who I had this conversation once with, and one of her sons went on to play professional esports. The other one went on to go to university with a scholarship. And I said, how did you get to this point? Like, how did you get past that fear of this industry and instead create something that was meaningful in this industry? And she's like, well, the first thing that I did is I had no idea what it was. I was scared, and my initial instinct was to let's pull them off of it. Let's put up those barriers, put up those limitations. And what I noticed very, very quickly, that no matter how much I fought them on it, they were going to always like kind of to drift back into it. They're always going to want it. And it was a huge barrier, a huge fight between us. And so what I did is I dove head first in the industry. I got on Discord, I got on Twitter, I signed up for mailing letters to all of the major esport news organizations, and I learned everything I possibly could about this industry, and I saw the potential. Now it was no longer a fear. I removed the fear because I saw the potential, and through that I now navigated it. Rather than fighting them on it, I changed their perception on the way that they should be approaching it. I created that structure, I created that discipline. I even made like the compromises with them. And I was telling Kristen this the other day, where she went to them, is like, how can you be eating Doritos when you're playing games? You're going to ruin your keyboard, you're going to ruin your mouse, it's going to get all gunked up with slime and disgusting Cheeto dust and stuff like that. So how about this? you go play your games, get in your scrims, get in your practices, and I'm going to bring you your snack, and we'll make sure it's something that you can eat with a fork so that you don't have to touch it, so that you're not ruining your mouse and keyboard. Well, what can you eat with a fork? It's like fruit, right? It's easy. And so she navigated that very, very smoothly of removing something that was unhealthy, but showing the kids as why you shouldn't be doing that, because you're going to ruin your keyboard, right? It's gonna mess up your equipment. So let's do something that's going to help you play while also still keeping you fed, right? So she navigated it purely by diving headfirst in and learning. When you remove that, you can remove fear by, I guess, just learning, right? Like once you understand something, it's less scary. And so that's the process that she went through, got on Discord, got on Twitter, got onto the mailing sites, started learning about the industry, started learning about the opportunities, the potentials, the career pathways and everything. And through that, she was able to create like the navigation and the compromises that helped them kind of get through it.
So brilliant what you say there, which is actually just, it's like, knowledge is power. So one of our adult coaches, Tia, hi, thanks for listening in, has asked specifically that. She said she's obviously on the app and she's asking, where is the vault and how can she find the Nutrition Network info in there? Thanks for looking, Tia. I really appreciate it. Relevant.
There are 2 levels of our app. There's FitGMR Free, which is sort of a basic set of metrics for people who are new to health and wellness and just want to learn some healthy habits. And then we have FitGMR Pro, which is it's $9.99 a month, or $99.99 for a year. So we basically, it's structured that way to give kids kind of the summer for free. So sign up for a year, do it while you're gaming in school, but also stick with it over the summer while you're maybe not in school. And the vault is in the pro version of the app. And the way the app is set up is knowing that many people who may be more drawn to games maybe haven't been drawn in their lives to traditional physical sport. And so we have a pretty lengthy, though appropriate, onboarding system in the app, so that when you first go in, you're asked, do you feel proficient in physical activity, yes or no? And if you don't, there's a whole series of kind of onboarding into physical activity and yoga, just kind of giving people the basics. And once you get through that, you essentially unlock the vault. And that's where all of the daily programming and content is. And for people who feel proficient already, they just go straight into daily programming and the vault. But it is in the pro version of the app.
So I guess for those of you that work with kids or adolescents or gamers of any age, it might be of interest to you. In our Universal Nutrition Network, members might be of interest to you to sign on to the pro version and actually access that content. And we can talk a little bit maybe about the content that we build and provide to FitGMR, because that will be of interest to our audience. I don't know if one of you want to share sort of what we built so far and how it ties in. You've mentioned a few times, obviously, we are the nutrition partner, so we fit into that pillar of health. What is the kind of content that our members will find in there related to nutrition? And how, I can tell you how it differs from the content in our trainings, is that it's obviously modified to this audience and it's packaged in a different way. Do you want to share a little bit about the vision for how this content fits in and how the nutritional side of the pillar fits in?
Holden, do you want to take that one?
I will make a run at it. One of the very first things we discovered when we started working with Cloud9, and this is back in 2018 when we first met with them, I had these professional athletes coming up to me and saying, what do you think about keto diets? What do you think about carbohydrate restriction? I'm finding that if I'm not drinking a lot of caffeinated beverages, if I'm restricting the amount of sugar that I'm eating, added sugars I'm eating on a daily basis, that I'm able to focus, pay attention, have better decision making when I'm scrimming or practicing, as well as at night when I'm solo queuing, and I have better sleep when I do these things. And I said, oh, that's quite interesting. You know, we think as scientists that we're so smart and that we discover new things, but generally these very high performers are far ahead of us. You know, we come along behind them and describe what they're actually doing and what they find to be successful. So when I heard that, it immediately resonated with me, because that's what Nutrition Network is about, specifically, not only from the medical side of things, but also on the performance side of things. And that's how we approached you, is saying, listen, we have this population, at least at the professional level, who've already sorted out that they're going to perform better, they're going to be healthier, they're going to sleep better. There are a lot of health benefits from restricting added sugars and processed food in their diet, not drinking a lot of sugary drinks and so on. So how can we formulate content that specifically speaks to this population in a way that's meaningful and that's not a medical lecture? And so I think that's an important distinction, that what you have done, I think, to this point very well, is get the content in a place where it's, maximum of 5 to 7 minutes long, but it brings information into this space about how to choose foods wisely, what to pay attention to on food labels, how you can go about incorporating healthy eating into your daily lives, things like that.
And I think it's so, I felt so excited when we started to talk about this project, because I know certainly for my son and his peers, is he looks up to and wants to be like the gamers that he, lead the way. So it's the guys that you're working with, Landon, certainly not, the level that he's at, and he wants to be like them. And, whereas in his rugby team, he looks up to, our captain, Sia Khaleesi, and wants to be like him. And he is an embodiment of health and fitness, but I don't necessarily always see that in the kind of sponsorship and advertising in gaming. And it feels really important to make that shift. To start to actually have really, really solid, healthy role models that are eating good foods and are sponsored by, not sponsored by Burger King maybe, but sponsored by healthier brands, and are starting to embody that. So I'm really excited about it. I'm excited about the nutrition aspect in there. Are you seeing gamers that are actually making the changes for themselves and that are working with transitioning with the support of the app and with the kind of the work that you're doing, Landon, in mental health? How is it going, and what else is needed? And this is, I'm sure our community is wondering that. What can we be doing as a public health community to support the next generation to get a lot healthier?
I think a lot of people would be surprised by what pros are already doing. Sorry, 1 second. Oh, bad timing. I think people would be surprised with what pros are doing. And this is like a small little story too. I was one time at a event in Poland, right? And this was for an Apex tournament, and that's teams of 3 essentially. And I was sitting in the players' lounge and talking with the team, and I heard a bunch of the players were kind of coming together, and they were talking about what's happening tonight. And somebody's like, "Hey, should we go out tonight?" Where they want to go out and just like kind of party in Poland. And the whole bunch of the players just looked at me and was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, we're here to we're here. We have a big tournament tomorrow. We're not going out tonight. We need to sleep. We can't be hung up. We can't do any of these things. Like, we have to be focused, right?" And so obviously that's a kind of like low bar right there, but you can start to see that this is starting to happen. These thoughts are starting to occur, and this was years and years ago. And so you fast forward another few years, and you're seeing, when you watch a lot of these professional teams on stage, you'll notice something. They aren't what you think, right? Like, they are much healthier than you would imagine. And obviously there is always people on both ends of the spectrum here, but they are probably not exactly what you have in mind when you think of a professional gamer. They are much healthier. They look a lot better, right? And so it's because they think about these things oftentimes. And this is really good. This is really like the intent behind everything, is if you can change the way that the leaders, or the way that like the people who everybody looks up to, if you can change the way that they do things, then it trickles down into the colleges, into the high schools, into the elementaries. It comes down very, very rapidly. And so the pro scene already is thinking about this a lot, and some people have gotten the coaching, the training from it. And other people just get naturally curious about, like, how do I become a better version of myself so I can perform for a long period of time? And yeah, it's fascinating, because the professional players are not what a lot of people think oftentimes. Like, we're still making that transition forward, but it is at a better baseline than what people anticipate. And so I think the second question you have is, what was it? How do we support, or how do we do what?
I guess it's, I'm just thinking of what we want to do ultimately is impact the next generation to not go on the terrible health trajectory that we've been on for the last 30 to 50 years. We're at that point where we can stop it. So how do we actually make sure that we are doing better? What is needed from the public health community, which is, I guess, to some extent, the nutrition network community of medical professionals, coaches, personal trainers? How can each of us being supportive of this movement, because it's essential and it's critical to getting the building the next generation of health rather than sick human beings.
I'll give one quick answer and then I'll hand it off to Kristen Holden. And this is one of my favorite words, and or the question that I ask is like, how do we make players curious, right? Like that's ultimately what it comes down to, is curiosity is such a powerful tool for growth. And so if you can kind of hint or show players that nutrition, sleep, mental performance, physical training, if you can show them that this has some correlation to their ability to play, to grow, to develop, to have a long career, if you can show them that relationship between all of these things and then get them curious to start their adventure in it, they will hunt down the answers. I guarantee it. Gamers are extraordinarily analytical people. And so if you show them that this is related or correlated or causes your success for a long period of time, they will go out and they will find you the answer. So like how do we get players curious? Let's get them curious. Let's get them asking questions. And when you can get them asking questions, you have a very, very hungry person to figure out a lot of these solutions.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I would just add, we have one father and son who have been doing the app together, a middle school son, and the app is gamified in a sense that you get a score, you get a daily score, you have a FitGMR score, which takes into your performance over time. And because everyone, it's not like if you sign up for the app on this day, you're at this stage. And if you sign up on this day, you're at that stage. Everyone is in it together. So everyone in the app is doing the same thing in the daily programming. So this father and son have been kind of doing it together and having a lot of success. We have another parent who had said, oh, I get it. So you can game, but you have to do your FitGMR. And there is a way that, we have what Holden was talking about, this team dashboard, which is really designed for, originally the intent is for coaches and managers to be able to track player performance and to, if interventions are needed, or to be able to get, in the morning, readiness view of, okay, so-and-so didn't sleep, so-and-so has wrist pain, like what are the things that we have to tune into? But as a parent, a parent could also create a team with their family and be the coach and kind of track and monitor and encourage to say, oh gosh, you haven't had enough water today. Let's make sure you get enough water. Or, we are definitely going the route of, through schools and having this be something that really is deployed through schools, through the team sponsors, just to help. I think like we've heard from other school organizations, parents think, well, if I have a choice between my child playing baseball or playing on the esports team, I'd much rather them be outside playing, like doing a physical sport. So I'm going to sign them up for this instead of that, even though they want to do this. And it's like, oh, this solves for that, because we can now tell the parents, listen, they have to do FitGMR. They're going to be maybe even, who knows, maybe even better, more fit than the baseball players. They'll be taking in their holistic health and not just targeting one thing. The education that you get through the FitGMR app is really holistic. So.
Yeah, and I would say too, at a public health level, or, even just looking at high level performers, we often think of performance as being an outcome, right? It's the first person across the finish line, or it's the team that won the competition, or it's the team that won the World Cup. That's the outcome. But no one really talks about the behaviors that led to that specific outcome. And I think it was a South African, Paddy Upton, who said, performance is not an outcome, it's a behavior. And so what we're trying to instill or provide the education and the mechanism for is, what are the behaviors you need to engage in? Whether it's, if I'm a student, there's certain things I need to do in order to be good at mathematics, or there's certain things I need to do if I want to be good in science or history. Well, from a health standpoint, what are the behaviors I need to do on a regular basis and be educated about in order to be a healthier person who can perform at a high level, whatever that level is? And so I think at FitGMR, we like to think we basically, I wouldn't call it stealing, but we saying that performance is not an outcome. It's really based on the behaviors that you engage in on a daily basis. And the outcomes will be that you'll be healthier, that you'll be a better performer, that you'll be a better communicator, that you'll be able to socialize more effectively, that you'll contribute to your community in a way that you would not have done had you not engaged in those behaviors. So I think that's where we're coming from at a very fundamental level.
Sure, amazing. I'm mindful that we're a minute over. We try to keep to time, but we could go on for hours because there's so much here. For those of you that are listening, thank you that sorry we didn't get to all of the questions. I know there are a couple of kind of technical questions around where they find the app. The team's going to reply to you. To each of you, thank you so much. I want to thank you for actually doing this and creating this incredible product. Or it's not a product, it's a vision, and it's a movement of change in the gaming community. It's so needed. For those of you listening, we fully support and believe in the vision that FitGMR's got, because they're actually people that understand nutrition and are using the nutrition network's knowledge and methodology instead of recommending, the usual disaster. So from that perspective, visionary in that area and in the work that they're doing, really land. And also just hearing your understanding and application of the mental health support that's needed and behavioral support in this area, absolutely incredible. So if you are a practitioner, I suggest you try it. If you've got kids or community members that need to be gaming and include this, it's a beautiful, I love what you said, Kristen, about actually saying you can game, but you've got to do it with FitGMR. It's a companion. So thank you so much. I think we're probably going to talk again and unpack more of this lifestyle into the future. But this is a really good way just to introduce what we're doing with you to the community. I know it's a little bit different to what we normally do, but maybe as if not more important in the work that we're seeding for the future. Thank you each so much for joining today, and have a beautiful day further. Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Bye.